Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is what's new in Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management, Wave 2 2024. My name is Ashley Desiongco, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Let's go ahead and meet our presenters. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Nicole Joyce, Senior FastTrack Solution Architect, as well as me. Like I mentioned, I'm Ashley Desiongco, also a Senior Solution Architect on the FastTrack team. So Nicole, over to you.
So as is customary, if you've joined our Tech Talks, we begin with a riddle of the day just to get your brain working. So our riddle today is brought to you by CoPilot, and it is, what do you get if you cross a snowman and a dog? So if you think you've got the answer to the riddle, you can put your guess in the chat. And as always, we will reveal the answer at the end of the presentation. All right. So today's agenda includes how to keep up with new features. We'll then do some new feature highlights for our core pillars of Copilot and AI innovation, as well as fundamentals. Then we will review the deprecated features in this wave. And as Ashley mentioned, we'll have time to respond live to some of your questions from the chat. So let's review our guidance on how to keep up with new features. So let's start with a quick recap of the framework that we use to release new features. So there are two main waves for features each year, with wave one covering versions that are generally available between April and September. And wave two covers versions that are generally available from October to March. So this reflects our high-level planning cycle that the product team uses to release new features and functionality. So within those two waves, there's a total of 4 versions released each year. It used to be 7, but we have removed 3 of those. So starting this year, we also introduced more flexibility in scheduling the updates. So customers can now select an auto-update window of their choice. Since the 10.0.39 release, customers can choose from 2 auto-update windows that are 4 weeks apart for each service update. So organizations can select the update window that better accommodates their validation process and operational schedules. And then in line with the reduced service updates, we have changed the allowable number of updates, which may be paused, from 3 to 1. So these changes took effect at the beginning of this calendar year 2024. So let's take a look at the overall timeline for this wave. So the first major release in this wave was 10.0.41, which has been generally available now since September 17th. And then next we have 10.0.42, which is upcoming in just a week or two on December 27th. And then in line with our reduced service updates, we then next move into Wave 1 2025 next March. So the service update availability documentation that is linked at the bottom of the slide is continuously updated with changes, and it reflects the changes that we discussed on the previous slide. So if you have not already, please bookmark this link as a resource and refer to it often. So what are some of the other resources that are available to help you keep up with what's new? So first, we have our release plans, which are linked here in the slide. These are released at the beginning of each wave, and they detail the features and modules for each product that's updated in that wave. They're maintained throughout the wave to reflect updates. And also, we have a release planner tool that is a great way to favorite and track features that you are interested in. Let's actually take a quick look here at the release planner tool. So I'm going to open the link on the slide, which brings us here. So a couple of things I want to point out from this link is that at the top of this page, you have resources, and you'll find a couple of things that we often refer you to. For example, the app source, which is where we have our Microsoft vetted third-party solutions cataloged that you can refer to, as well as our ideas site. So if you've got a feature request for one of our products, you can submit an entry on the idea site and have your colleagues upvote it to help us prioritize our backlog for our engineering team. So if I scroll down here, you'll see that not only do I have a link to our full release plans, these are the long PDF versions that detail all of the features. But we also have under the related information that release planner tool that I mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and open this as well. So as this loads, one of the nice things here is that on the left-hand side, you can drill down into a specific business application that you're interested in. Today, we are talking about supply chain management, so I'm going to go there. And then you'll see on the right-hand side that you can see what are the planned features. These come directly from our engineering release plans, and they are in the same feature areas that we're talking about today. So we have Copilot and AI innovation, and then we have some of our areas that we consider fundamentals, such as inventory and logistics. But the nice thing here is that for individual features, you can expand, get some additional information when it will be in preview and when it will be generally available. Sometimes there are even visuals that are here, and you are able to track the individual features this way. So this is a great tool. Again, just like the service update bookmark, I would recommend that this is another site that you go ahead and bookmark and refer to because, again, it's kind of a living site that is updated as we update our release plans. All right, so let's move back to our presentation and talk about some other resources as well. When each individual version is released in a preview, we also update the what's new or changed article that's posted on our Learn site for each Dynamics and Power Platform product. So it lists the features and links to our product documentation on how to use those new features, as well as our blogs that we publish. So the Microsoft engineering team releases blogs that recap the wave plans and any major features, especially that are released. So it's good to keep an eye on the blog posts for some of those bigger product announcements that we do. And then finally, of course, the FastTrack team produces tech talks like the one you're in now, which include deep dives on the new features and summary recaps per product of what is included in each wave. So it's a great forum to join live as you are today and ask questions, or if you miss it, to watch the recording to catch up on what's new. So now let's switch into reviewing some of the Wave 2 features that we've released for supply chain management. So I'm going to hand it back over to Ashley to get us started.
First, let's review the new Copilot and AI features that are available in this release. And in the area of demand planning, and in this case, I'm referring to the demand planning Power App-based application. There are two new features related to how Copilot can help planners in their forecasting. These Copilot cursor prompts, which you'll see what that looks like in the next slide, they're already in public preview. So if you have the demand planning app installed, I highly recommend that you check these out. If we click Nicole to the next one, also on the Copilot front, we're continuing to improve the sidecar experience, which is that in-app help that you can access directly from the D365 application, just like a chat function. And then on the procurement front, Copilot can automatically send reminders to suppliers that haven't yet responded to a purchase inquiry, for example. And Copilot can bring incoming change requests to the attention of purchasers when a vendor can't deliver on time or in full, and then offers the option to update the purchase order accordingly to a change request. So Copilot can do that on behalf of the user. So let's look at some of these in a little bit more detail. So I mentioned these Copilot cursor prompts in the demand planning app. So what these do is they help you explore a specific data point or a data range in a forecast or a time series. And they provide a set of these predefined questions that you can ask Copilot, which then returns insights into notable shifts, whether that's a positive or a negative shift, any trends or anomalies. And this is across multiple dimensions as well. And what Copilot will do, it'll reply using natural language, summarizing the response, also provide any visuals if any are available, which make it easy for you to go ahead and digest that information and then use it to make informed decisions like updating your forecast. And something that we try to do every time we review new features is relate this back to the business process catalog. So this feature falls in the forecast to plan overall business process, more specifically the conduct supply chain planning L2 process area. That's where this feature sits. All right. And just to give you more context, if you want to look at how this applies to a demand forecast, you'll notice that the Copilot cursor appears once a user is hovered over the data set. So you can see on the image there, we've got a time series, and what you don't see is the cursor, but somebody's hovering over that purple bar in the February 2024 bucket, and then Copilot is responding with those insights. And so these features really help users to analyze forecasts quickly and then understand the key data insights to, again, make those informed decisions. All right, let's look at the next feature. So the F&O apps, we already have this in-product AI-based contextual help with Copilot. And you can access that by clicking on the Copilot icon right next to where the company name is. So the update here is now you can easily keep the conversation going with a single click by selecting, again, a short list of likely follow-up questions that are automatically generated by Copilot based on your previous queries. Kind of like the screenshot here doesn't show it that well, but kind of like we saw in the Copilot cursor prompts for demand planning, basically Copilot will have some clickable follow-up questions that you can select, and then it'll automatically submit that to Copilot, and it will respond with the answer to that. So you just select a question to receive the related information without needing to formulate a new query, which makes the process of learning how to use Dynamics more efficient and intuitive. I'll note that this is currently only available in the US, but there are plans to expand to other countries in future releases. And again, the business process that this feature relates to is in the administer to operate level 1. Specifically, if you go down further, it's configure and manage Copilot capabilities. That's in the administer system features process area. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Nicole now to cover the new features in our fundamentals pillar.
All right, great. Thanks, Ashley. So let's move from Copilot and AI innovation to talk about fundamentals. And we're going to start with inventory and logistics. So we have a couple of new features to discuss here. So in the costing area, we have a new ability for recalculating weighted average. You can now choose whether to include transactions that haven't yet been financially updated. So this feature adds an option for item model groups, includes transactions without financial closing, and only applies during recalculations and doesn't affect inventory closing. And this is now in public preview. And then when we look at quality management, we now have the ability for Copilot to help trace and solve quality issues within the Traceability add-in. So let's take a closer look at that feature. So the Traceability add-in for Dynamics 365 supply chain management tracks manufacturing activities against the serial and or batch numbers of specific components and the related finished goods. So when quality issues occur, Copilot can quickly collect all the relevant details from both the Traceability add-in and supply chain management itself to summarize product status, track custody, and analyze deviations related to the impacted products. So not only can this help companies solve quality issues quickly, but it can also find correlations between specific component batches and manufacturing delays to help improve overall manufacturing performance efficiency. So this new release adds an activities page in supply chain management, which includes a Copilot-generated summary of recent activities and a full list of activity details. So Copilot provides an activity summary that highlights the related item status, plus any other useful information. From there, users can drill down into an activity and find related details. So the summary for each activity provides instant access to key information such as location, time, items, workers, vendors, and much more. So this is planned for public preview in March 2025, which again is our actually Wave 1 2025. So for this, the business process catalog reference is in our inventory to deliver end-to-end process and the manage inventory quality process area. And the actual business process it relates to at the level 3 is inspect inventory. So to put this feature into a broader context, let's talk a little bit more about the Traceability app. So the Traceability add-in for Dynamics 365 supply chain management enhances visibility into product genealogy across the supply chain. It tracks events and attributes, offering an interface for data query and analysis that's crucial for meeting regulatory requirements and achieving sustainability goals. Traceability is essential in industries like pharmaceuticals, high-tech manufacturing, and food and beverage process manufacturing and distribution due to the regulatory and legal requirements in those industries specifically. The Traceability add-in enables Dynamics 365 users to quickly access product trace information so that they can stay compliant and reduce time to recall processes. With its composable architecture, it can both natively access a Dynamics 365 data and be integrated with any other source of traceability data. So in this new release, adding the CoPilot summarization helps users identify where those quality issues may lie across the product genealogy and the related activities and events. So let's shift gears to our next area of features in fundamentals, which is planning and procurement. So in the planning space, we have a handful of new features to discuss. The first one is the capable to promise or CTP calculations in Dynamics 365 supply chain management. Now consider both materials and resources when calculating delivery dates. So this information is essential for assemble to order or make to order businesses. CTP calculations explode all the components, purchases, transfers, and capacities needed to manufacture any specific item and can be run on any selected sales order line. And the feature is now in public preview. Dynamics 365 SCM now provides a greatly improved support for master planning collaboration because it now continuously recalculates your master plans, refreshing them after each edit that is done. So now planners and other stakeholders will see the latest fully optimized planning results as they are evaluating and updating each plan. And this feature is now also in public preview. And finally, in the planning area, this release enhances the demand forecasting and planning app that Ashley discussed by adding some of the following capabilities. You can now filter the data that you need from different legal entities. You can view and select the best fit model for each planning unit based on accuracy and performance metrics. You can allocate demand across different dimensions, such as product, customers, or channels based on allocation basis that you define. You can incorporate external signals, such as inflation rates or weather conditions, into your forecast calculation and understand how they would impact your demand. You can export your data to other systems or platforms, such as Dynamics 365, but also Azure Data Lake. You can customize and map your export fields as needed. You can aggregate your data by different time periods, such as year, quarter, or week in the grid view. And you can also perform calculations in the grid view that update in real time. You can manage orchestration templates for running your forecast jobs. You can delete or update your templates as needed. You can view all your forecast jobs in one page and focus on the ones that failed or need your attention. You can apply time fence rules to prevent edits in specific periods that are locked or closed. You can also see the dependencies between your profiles and time series and how they affect your forecast results. You can use weighted average as an aggregation method for your data. We also now have support for bidirectional calculations between quantity and amount for your demand scenarios. And then finally, you can extend the Analyze feature within CoPilot to more metrics and dimensions that are relevant to your business, and extend the calculations and transformations that you can apply to your data with custom logic or expressions. So that is a lot of enhancements in our demand planning area. Let's also look at our procurement area. So here we have a new mobile app that allows users to approve purchase orders and purchase requisitions without having to log in to our Dynamics 365 client. So let's take a deeper dive on the procurement app. So the mobile app starts by presenting an overview of the user's assigned tasks and due dates. From there, the user can open the details for each purchase requisition and purchase order to be approved without switching context. On gaining a full understanding of the context and details of an approval request, the user can then choose between the approval options configured for the workflow by selecting the appropriate response. Could be approve, reject, delegate to another user, or request a change. And this app is now generally available. The business process area that this relates to is under our source to pay end-to-end process. The business process area is procure goods and services. And then our business process at the level 3 area is maintain purchase orders. So you can learn more about this app by viewing our product documentation, which includes a helpful FAQ page, which I have linked on the slide here. We also have a dedicated tech talk that was done recently, which can be referenced for an in-depth review of the features and functionality of this new mobile app. I have also included that link on the slide here. All right. So, of course, we love to highlight all of our new features, but we don't always do a great job of bringing attention to the features that we are sunsetting. So let's review the features that we're deprecating in this release. So, Ashley, back to you.
All right. Let's go through the first one, and this is the pricing management module. So what is it? It's a module within supply chain management that's designed to help businesses manage complex pricing scenarios. And why are we deprecating it? Well, because we've come out with something new. So this is being replaced with the new unified pricing management module. So what do you do next? You should switch to the unified pricing management module. It's available for you to try out in your sandbox pre-prod environment. So I highly recommend, if you currently use a pricing management module, to go ahead and start translating your configurations and your requirements over to the unified pricing module. All right, the next one is the job card terminal. So what is it? It's a feature that we have in the manufacturing module. It allows workers to register their work. And so why are we deprecating it? Well, this is being replaced with the new production floor execution interface. The actions that you were taking in the job card terminal, you can now take in the PFE screen. So what should you do next is start using the production floor execution screen. All right, next one. And I know there was a question in the chat already about this. So the scale units for supply chain management. So if you're not familiar with it, it's a dedicated processing capacity for 2 workloads, manufacturing and warehouse. And so why are we deprecating it? To be honest, there's a change in the architecture, and it's going to be replaced by some new features. So for example, if you were looking at the warehouse execution workloads, what you can do next is look at the warehouse only mode feature. And this is something that we have tech talks on. In the past, Nicole has done, I think 1 or 2 that you can find on the communities page. So highly recommend you look into that if you were thinking about the warehouse scale unit. All right, I think, Nicole, you're going to take us through the last bit of these, right?
Yes, thanks, Ashley. So we have a couple of more features that are being deprecated in this wave. The first one is the release to warehouse page. So this was a form where the users can initiate the release of orders to the warehouse. It was a combined form. So why are we deprecating it? Honestly, the old form was not very performant. It could be quite slow depending on the amount of data that was pulled into that form. So in order to improve performance, we have split out the release to warehouse pages. So what do you do next? You begin using the split pages, which are release sales orders to warehouse and release transfer orders to warehouse. We have actually now hidden the old combined release to warehouse page in the app. And next, we have the inventory transaction support for internal warehouse operations. So what is it? This is our traditional inventory transactions framework that stores the information about all of the logistics transactions when you're using warehouse management. Why are we deprecating it? Again, for performance improvements. So we have released a new framework for warehouse transactions that replaces this. So what do you do next? Well, if you're not using warehouse management, there's no action for you. If you are using warehouse management currently, we are in a period of deprecation here where the feature is on by default, but you have to explicitly go into the warehouse management module parameters and enable this new framework by work order type. So by sales order picking, by transfer order receipt, all of those different things that you do in the warehouse. Eventually, on our deprecation timeline, which is currently listed as 1 year after the release of 10.0.41. So if you're following along our timeline, that's sometime next calendar year, right at the earliest. Our old framework will be going away, and this new framework will be kind of the default for everybody. If you are just now implementing or implementing in the future, essentially you wouldn't know any better. This will just be the default inventory transaction framework. Please leave any questions about this in the chat. And speaking of questions, we have given you a lot of information here today. So it's your turn to ask your questions in the chat. So Ashley, do we have anything we can address?
We do. Okay, let's start with, and I think this is referring to the CoPilot chat sidecar feature. So the question is, or how I interpret the question is, can users ask questions about the data within F&O or only about general features pulling from the doc site? And I actually am not 100% sure on this. I know that recently we introduced the summary tabs on some like master data like products and vendors that Copilot, it uses Copilot to summarize any transactions or events that have happened, let's say, for example, for that item. So that does use the data within F&O. As far as asking the questions in the sidecar, I'm not 100% sure. Nicole, do you have any more insights? If not, we can follow up.
Yeah, I would say let's follow up with the team to get a concrete answer on that one. But yeah, like you said, I know the summarization features and the Copilot cursor features, right, are obviously using the data in your instance of Dynamics. But we also do continue, like we mentioned here, to enhance this Copilot Sidecar feature. So if you haven't used it since we initially released it, I would say go ahead and do some more testing with this. As Ashley mentioned, this screenshot doesn't show it well. We could potentially bring up an environment, but there are now the clickable, right, kind of follow-on questions that you can ask as well in a sidecar. So there's certainly enhancements that we're making here.
All right. The next question is related to the features for planning. So the question is, regarding the real-time updating of master planning, can we specify per master plan whether that plan should be updated in real time or not?
Based on everything we talked about for the updates, I would say Yes, is my assumption, but I would certainly ask you to review the updated documentation that we have on demand planning. I believe we've also got some dedicated tech talks from the team that have been released on the demand planning app and functionality as well. So that would answer your kind of specific questions about the per plan updates.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, but again, to Nicole's point, let's review the tech talks that are dedicated to that or the doc site just to confirm. But I think the answer is yes. All right, the next one. So with respect to the scale unit deprecation, what is the go-to for manufacturing then? I'm assuming this is because we had a response for warehouse management, but nothing specific for manufacturing. And this is a great question. I know that there isn't anything in the near future on the roadmap for manufacturing. I don't know, Nicole, if you've heard anything different.
I've not heard anything different. We can leave the link. Let me copy it here. I know on each of these slides, we have put the general removed or deprecated features link. We have one that takes you directly to this announcement, which has a little bit more detail. There may even be some additional links in there that you can click through as well. So let me see if I can leave that in the chat.
All right. We have a couple questions related to, I think this is the deprecation of the inventory transactions. So the first question is for the warehouse specific inventory transactions, the historical records don't move over to warehouse transactions, but only go forward from the day we turn it on, correct? Also, how often should we run the archive for warehouse transactions? Any suggestion on archiving?
Yeah, this is a great question. Let me switch back to the right slide. So now we're talking about the new warehouse inventory transactions feature. What you said is correct. So in our current kind of influx state of the deprecation of the old framework, if you turn on, right, the new framework for a specific type of work or for all of them, basically the system will continue to process anything that was in process on the old framework, right? And then anything that is newly created after the new framework has been turned on, it will use the new framework. Similarly, right, you can actually still disable these things at this point in time if you're just testing it. If you disable the new framework again, anything that was in process with the new framework completes on the new framework before any new work then picks up the old framework since you disabled it. The second part was on archiving. In the environment, in the warehouse management module parameters, where you are enabling and disabling the framework, if you scroll beyond that, there is actually some archiving parameters as well. We pretty aggressively, by default, archive the new framework transactions. It's something like every 5 or 10 minutes, pretty quickly. So, but there are some parameters around it. So take a look at that, as well as we have a ton of product documentation and guidance out there for this. There is a whole Viva or Yammer channel where you can ask about these warehouse inventory transactions functionality as well if you're having any issues or just need more support from our product team. I would encourage you to ask your questions there. One thing I will note that you didn't explicitly ask, but when we're talking about archiving, is that when these new transactions, right, are then archived, if we think downstream to the reporting piece on our warehouse transactions, you are going to want to point any reporting to those warehouse inventory transactions archival tables instead of to the new kind of warehouse inventory transactions table that is there, because that archiving is happening so frequently, right? You're going to want to look at the data in the archive table most likely for any of your reporting and analytics needs.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. Another question related to the same topic. So does the inventory transactions deprecation only refer to transfers within the same warehouse management managed warehouse?
Yes, if you're not using WMS, so say you are transferring to like a non-WMS, like a warehouse that represents like a retail store or something, then it doesn't apply, right, where you're not using WMS. But anywhere that you are, right, that you have warehouses in Dynamics that are WMS enabled, then these warehouse inventory transactions kind of framework changes apply.
Thanks, Nicole. I think that's it for the inventory transactions topic. Here's a new one. So for the traceability feature, how can we use it? Is it in F&O or is it an app? The answer to that actually is both, right? It is a separate app called Supply Chain Traceability. It's an add-in, which you will need to enable from F&O, and it uses data from F&O.
That is correct. Yes, I believe if you have a supply chain management license, that you can enable this add-in without having to have like the SCM premium license. So it's much like our inventory visibility service. And yes, it can ingest data from F&O, but like we mentioned, also from other external sources. So it is a separate app.
Yeah, I think for the time being, you don't need that premium license to try it out. But I think I put this in the chat as well. Eventually, it will be part of the premium SKU. So try it out now.
Yes, absolutely.
Here's a question that is more on the general side. So on the release planner, Nicole, that you showed earlier, when you subscribe to a feature, like add it to your list, do you receive an alert when the GA date changes?
That's a great question. So if you add something to like your own tracking, it shows up in my release plans. So if I switch over here, well, I don't see anything because I didn't add anything there or I'm not signed in. But as far as an alert, I don't know that we automatically push anything to you, or you would have to actually like come back in here and review your release plan. Now you could probably, it's just a website, you could set that up, or create a Power Automate flow, right, to send you an email when these things change, would be my suggestion. But yeah, I think you have to just come in here and review your individual release plan that would have any of the features that you're tracking.
Yeah, I honestly, I didn't know either. I've added features here to my release plan, but I've never gotten an email of any kind of change.
Yeah, I think you'll have to set up an alert. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we have another question that's kind of general. So the question is, can we have an update on these propositions that have a lot of votes? And they're referring to the ideas portal. I will just say that on the FastTrack team, we do meet with the product team regularly, and we do look at this list of ideas. We do sort by most voted too, and there are discussions when they talk about roadmap and release planning. Those ideas are definitely part of that conversation. So always upvote if you have an idea yourself and get your peers to upvote it, or if you see one that you would also benefit from. It's really important to upvote those because it is used as part of the release planning conversations. So we can't update or comment on any specific ones, but in general.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Ashley. Because even if we receive like an escalation from a customer and there's an idea out there, if it does not have a lot of votes from you guys, from the community, we are still going to get pushback from engineering to say, hey, there's only a handful of votes. We're not going to like prioritize something that essentially is going to fix an issue for one customer, right? We have got very limited engineering time and resources. So we've got to make sure that anything that we're doing scales, right, to impact the most amount of customers that we can. So you guys have so many good ideas that the webpage timed out. But yes, you can come in here and much like our release planner, right, you can filter it down by individual business application. And then within that application, there are areas, right? So if you've got a general thing, if you've got something on planning, like that per plan update we just talked about, if that isn't supported, you can come in here and add it. Kind of by default shows you some of the top things. When engineering starts to evaluate this for their backlog, you see that status move to under review. Now, I get where the question is coming from, which is, hey, this has 520 votes. It's under review by engineering, but maybe it's been sitting in this status for years, right? With no movement on it by engineering. We get that is super frustrating, right? As Ashley mentioned, we have regular touch points with engineering where we're reviewing kind of all of the signals from customers and partners, aggregating feedback, trying to, prioritize these things that are the voted the most. And they try to release, anywhere from like the 1 to 3 kind of top ideas in every release. With the caveat, I will say to you, over the last couple of years since, ChatGPT became generally available, like in November 2022, and a lot of our priorities as an engineering organization and as a company have moved to AI and to Copilot, that has unfortunately pushed some of the top voted ideas in our backlog for fundamentals down our priority list. That's just a reality. I know you see it reflected in what we're releasing in our release plans. So just know that we're aware of it. But it's why, our leadership and everybody is still committed to not just Copilot and AI innovation, but also fundamentals as our secondary pillar that we are focused on. So we know that there are still upvoted things with hundreds of votes that have been sitting here for more than one major release that we need to address. So please continue to upvote them. Please continue to ask us these questions in these forums. Come to our focus groups. Share your feedback on Yammer, because the more signals we have to take to the engineering team, the more that we can push for these things to actually get done.
Yeah, don't lose hope.
Yeah. Keep pushing us.
All right. I have another question related to traceability again. So will the old traceability still work? And will new features be deployed also to the old tracing in F&O? I think this is referring to like track and trace.
Or item tracing.
Mm-hmm.
You, Ashley, you can answer this if you'd like as well. But I'd say this doesn't necessarily change, right? Like the current item tracing capability that we have in Dynamics. One thing that we've discussed, I believe, in the last What's New presentation that we did for Wave 1 was that there is what we call track and trace feature that was new in Dynamics, specifically around like manufacturing and component tracing, that uses this new traceability feature, right, to help us with some of the genealogy in the tracing. But again, that doesn't necessarily replace the item trace capability that's there for like in your product information management module today.
Yep, I'm of the same understanding.
Yeah, the traceability app is really meant to give you a much broader view than just your Dynamics activities, right, across your entire supply chain. So think of, if the items are on an ocean container, right, and they're being transported, maybe they end up at a warehouse, you have the full traceability, because if it gets to an end customer, if we're talking about something like produce, right, and there's a recall because of an E. coli outbreak or something, right? You need to be able to have that broader supply chain visibility to do that time to recall functionality, which you wouldn't have full visibility to with just a Dynamics item trace, right? All that would tell you is kind of how it was produced inside of Dynamics. You might know, a shipment or something that was sent out on to what customer, but then you're kind of blind, right, to the rest of the supply chain after that, unless you deploy our new traceability app.
All right, I know we only have 10 minutes left. I don't see any questions that we haven't addressed, but I also haven't seen any attempts to answer the riddle. So if you've got an answer, I don't know, Nicole, if you want to pull the slide back up to remind people of what the question is, go ahead and put it in the chat. Let's see if somebody can get it right.
Yeah, so here's your last chance. So as a reminder, the riddle was, what do you get if you cross a snowman and a dog? So I'm going to reveal the answer. 3, 2, 1. It is frostbite. So there was an adorable picture of a dog. I couldn't resist. So if you don't think it's funny, you can blame our CoPilot. So, all right. With that, Ashley, I will turn it to you to wrap us up.
All right. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback on today's session and to get more input on what you want to see in the future. I did see some comments in the chat for requests for additional tech talks on traceability, so we will provide that feedback to the team. But if you wouldn't mind taking some time to scan the QR code to take a short survey about this tech talk, we would really appreciate any feedback that you have. So thanks to our presenters and to you, our audience, for attending our tech talk today.